Stories show people who you are as a person. Stories reveal your character. In conversations, you can't say, once upon a time there was a tiger. That kind of stuff doesn't work. People just run away, right?
Exactly. Although every leader has a story, right? But not every leader can make that story ripple through their team.
In fact, I call stories are the currencies of the organization. Stories are authentic narratives of your actions.
What are the key elements of a story that can live beyond one leader? Something that actually becomes a part of the organization's DNA.
One of the best definitions of communication is the response you get. Great stories happen to those only can tell them. What is the most important thing that really makes relationships work? And I think it's connections.
Now, welcome to another episode of Unmute Yourself. In a world overflowing with noise, there is something that always connects people, which we say that the stories that connect people. And because that's the thing that makes people feel seen, heard, and inspired. So today I'm in conversation with Uday Kiran, a storyteller founder and the mind behind Mentza, who believes storytelling is not just a communication, but a leadership act. So welcome to the podcast today. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Hi, thanks so much, Preeti. I've been seeing a lot of work that you're doing on Unmute Yourself. So it's a privilege to be a part of the show.
Wow, thank you so much. So, we are exploring a powerful theme today, which is scaling storytelling from personal brand to organizational voice. How can a leader's story become a team's shared language? And how do organizations stay authentic while they're still growing? So stay with us. We're going to have a lot of conversation, which is about influence, integrity, and the art of building stories that last. So, Uday, let's begin where all stories start. That is with yours. What's your story? What drew you towards storytelling as your life's work?
That's a fascinating start. I'm going to kind of dig back into where it all started. There's not one place where it started. I think I've always been a bit of I've always been a bit of a, the way I lit people, the way my communication was, without realizing, I thought I was doing a lot of work in the space of storytelling. But one specific moment, if you were to kind of ask me, was when I was in Samsung towards the last year, and I was leading something called the Samsung Sales and Marketing Academy, and it was a tough transition because I mean, I was in the sales and marketing and everything else all through the country, across the globe, worked with multiple organizations selling soaps, talcum powders, mobile phones, and then I opted in for moving into the space where I was to kind of work with leaders and set up a training organization within the company. And one of the first few months, I remember I was supposed to lead a kind of a session for, I think, the service team, and also the sales team. Being a leader or being someone as a sales leader or a marketing leader, as I was in the business, was one act. And getting understood and making people understand, making people care, making people trust you to learn from you was a completely different thing. And that's when I went back and understood that I can't just give opinions and facts and just go on and on like a moron. I had to kind of figure out a way to engage, and that's when I discovered storytelling. I think it's the most natural way in which we communicate, and that's when I realized I had to up my act. At those days, Sean Callahan was taking sessions on
Okay.
and also helping us to kind of get better on over a 6 month program. Sean Callahan is award-winning author, perhaps one of the best storytellers. He's written this book called Putting Stories to Work, and he had this session, and he heads this organization called Anecdote International, Anecdotally Yours, and then the podcast. So then I joined him, and I think from there I met many people. So once you get into the thing, as you have done, you start meeting a lot of people. I connected with Ravi, who's a great friend and who's just released this book called Story Rules. So a lot of people, I picked up threads and then started inculcating, uh, and I started feeling a lot of passion for it, and then I got into it, and then one day I created 1 minute stories, and that's how we got
Wow.
into
Yeah,
it.
that's a wonderful concept, the 1 minute stories, because when we think of about stories, we just go back to our childhood when we had the storytelling by our nannies and daddies, our grandmothers. So 1 minute stories, it's a very interesting concept. And it's very interesting how you describe that. It's like storytelling, it just not become your work, it's your way how you see the world, right?
Yeah.
So,
In fact, 1 minute stories, there's a little bit of journey there. So it was pandemic. We were all sitting at homes, and I was trying to do,
2020, yeah.
and it so happened that I was watching this Big Bang Theory, which is my favorite sitcom.
I'm
And there,
watching it currently.
or if you're a fan of that, there is one episode in which all of them are celebrating the Star Wars Day, and the Penny is not aware of it, and these guys are saying Star Wars Day, May the Fourth be with you, and it was incidentally May the Fourth, and I was intrigued by what I'm a big Star Wars fan, and they were
Okay.
talking about, and everyone's surprised about May the Fourth, and I said, hey, this is a fantastic story because I love George Lucas. In those days, everyone was writing something on LinkedIn. So I said, look, I was also searching for material. So I said, let me write the story of George Lucas and how he created Star Wars. It was a
Wow.
those days LinkedIn had a just a word limit of 225 words. So you just wrote, I just condensed that entire story to 225 words, and and then the fashion was to tag it with something, and I realized that if you read the entire thing, it was taking 1 minute. So
Wow.
I just casually put hashtag 1 minute stories as a LinkedIn tag. Uh, it's a very interesting thing that the next morning I woke up, the post had gone viral. A lot of people started liking it. Then I got very enthused. Then I wrote another story about Colgate founder. Then I wrote a story about Tata. Then a series of LinkedIn posts. And eventually, that hashtag 1 minute stories. Eventually, I decided let me open a Substack newsletter, and then I went on to write about what 100 odd stories. People
Wow.
started circulating it, and then when it came to me that when I had to open my own organization, then I was searching for the best name. I searched for all kinds of names. Someone told me, "You have such a good asset. Why don't you just name your organization as 1 minute stories?" And that's how I did
Exactly.
it. So yeah,
Wow. So
yeah,
looking back now, do you think that clarity, that sense of calling was somewhere, right?
yeah.
Gradually, yes, but that aha moment was there.
Yeah, I think the credo of 1 minute stories, the way I looked at it, I think Priti is you'd appreciate that even before 2019, there is this huge fad, I would say, of storytelling, and there were a lot of people coming and talking about how storytelling is, why storytelling is important, why you need to really become. I think why stories were becoming important was a very big thing during that time, and somewhere I did realize that soon that fad will change to the skill, and people will, and if I have to kind of move it to a level where I can sustain on it and grow on it, I have to bring it to a usage. I have to bring it into a conversation. So that's where that's so. For example, a lot of people say, what is something original that you have done?" I keep telling people that there's nothing original out there. You just take something from what is existing, and then
Exactly.
you add your own sense of innovation or whatever you think is
Your
your own
personal
self,
touch.
and that is what becomes authentic. Authenticity is when you take something which is existing, like you. Everyone's got a different way of making an aloo paratha. If you get
Correct,
no aloo
correct.
paratha is the
That's
same, so you could actually say aloo paratha is,
that's a good
or,
example.
or if you come to the south, you'll say a sambar is different in every house. So
Exactly.
which is where I think I dropped onto this whole concept that look, you should be able to tell stories and embed them in your conversations, get in and get out even before the audience realizes it's a story.
Yeah.
Make it
Wow.
conversational. So
Make it conversational.
1 minute stories is largely or always a conversational way where you just get in and get out, because in conversations you can't say once upon a time there was a tiger. That kind of stuff doesn't work. People just run away, right?
Exactly, exactly. So it shifts from a personal story to creating a collective ripple kind of a thing, right?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
So, Uday, every leader has a story, right? But not every leader can make that story ripple through their team when we talk about the ripple effect. So, what bridges that gap according to you?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think not just every leader. I think everyone of all of us have a story, right?
All
There
of
is
us.
enough. If you actually go back to our first principles, the only way we understand anything in this world is
Story.
the way we make sense of everything is the world. There's this experiment
That's so
which I
true.
keep showing in my workshops about this experiment done by Heider and Muller in 1940s, and they developed the scratch animation where just a random two, three circles and one triangle, and something happens, and there's no audio, nothing. And then when I show them that animation and I ask people, and I've done some 100 odd workshops on that, and everyone comes out. Someone tells it's a Bollywood love triangle, someone says it's about adulting, someone says it's bullying, someone says it's competitor. And the fundamental thing which came out of that very interesting experiment is also in Wikipedia, is that if all humans, all of us, when we are shown something ambiguous, the only way we make sense out of it is a story that we make out of ourselves. for ourselves, right?
Yes, how we connect to that.
But the interesting thing is the converse of it. The more powerful reason is that
Hmm.
if you don't own your story and if you don't tell your story, people will
Hmm.
make up their own.
True.
Yeah. So
That's so
that's
true.
why if you don't tell your story, if you're a leader and if you're not able to tell your story and if you're not able to say why we need to do something, or if you are not able to kind of show him, because you can say that we need to get high profits or we need to get hit the targets, people will agree to authority and bow down to authority or bow down to what you say, but they may not connect. I think what happens in storytelling is that this phenomenal ability to zoom into that moment
Hmm.
and to show them how that journey happened, and that is where the buy-in happens, isn't it? So I think the reason a
True.
lot of good leaders use stories is that in storytelling there's a very strong principle of show and don't tell. It's a very powerful thing, but
Yeah.
it's something that we see with our children also. When you show them
Hmm.
how to do it, they're more likely
Exactly.
to follow it rather than when you just tell them how to do it, right? Or tell them to do it. So storytelling
Exactly.
exactly has this basic first principles of show and don't tell. And I think it's leaders who are able to convert their experiences into stories and learning stories
Hmm.
without sounding preachy and letting them kind of embedding them and move in to the organization. I think they are the people who are able to create that ripple effect. I'll give you an example
True.
before I give it back to you. I joined in Wipro in 2012. I joined in Wipro in 2003 to 2004. I was in the Sajjapur campus right across my house. First few days, we have a huge canteen, and I was in Wipro. We have this situation. Everyone carries the. Those days, it was a very very new concept, very neat canteens. We were carrying the plate. I was serving, and it was very peak time, lunch time. And after about 2 3 minutes, I saw kind of a hush, and everyone was looking at me. I was wondering why is everyone looking at me? Is it like I'm a strange guy? Then I realized no one was looking at me. People were looking at the person behind me, and that was Mr. Azim Premji, who
Wow.
was
That's
also carrying a
great.
plate and a spoon.
Correct.
And I was like, God, what is happening
Wow.
at turn? And I wanted to give Mr. Premji a space, and he said, no, just go ahead. And then, very interesting, um, I loaded everything and I was very conscious of what I was loading. And then he was also loading. And then I went and I said, this man is following me. And then I sat in an empty place, and this man actually comes and sits in front of me. And then he says, look, I've just seen you. You're new to Wipro. And he said, yes. I said, yes. I could barely say, tell me something, where are you from, and whatever. And I blurted out something. He said, good, all the best, do well. And then he got up and then he went and joined his gang of senior managers, right? And
Wow.
I've shared the story with, and for me, this is the ultimate induction that I had got. And when I
Exactly.
meet senior leaders, I just tell them this, and I say that
Wow.
2 or 3 seconds of impression that you can actually have on a junior employee transforms, and I can remember that. Now that's
Hmm.
now this is something that I'm talking about 25 years later.
True.
What leadership can do, isn't it? So if someone just remembers some of these
Wow.
moments, you can just convert them into a teaching moment
True.
without making it as if you're teaching someone something.
Great. That's great. Something great to share with everyone. So, Uday, when a leader story, now as in Premji, as you quoted, so when a leader story starts resonating with the team, is that when it becomes the culture of the organization?
That's a fantastic question. In fact, I call stories are the currencies of the organization.
Yeah,
Right?
true.
The stories are the one today. I mean, for example, one of the most common stories in Infosys at that point of time, if you remember very well, was that Mr. Narayan Murthy was so humble that he used to clean his own bathroom,
Yes.
or something like that. Now, whether it's true or not, it kind of
Mhm.
spreads like wildfire.
Yeah.
I remember a time in Wipro where we used to have this entire version of people not wanting to upgrade from their existing company car because Mr. Premji, at that point of time in 2007 and 8, was actually driving a Contessa. And how can you have a car which is much more exotic than Contessa if the owner himself is driving a Contessa? He refused to say,
Exactly.
I'm okay with it, he used to say. But
Wow.
the rest of the folks used to look, the rest of the guys need to upgrade, so you need to upgrade. So
Hmm.
Mr. Premji very reluctantly upgraded his car, I think. And then eventually the rest of the management also upgraded his car. Now, stuff like this suddenly becomes a corporate lore. I mean, these are stuff.
Exactly.
You go to Starbucks and the Starbucks leader talks about a moment where the whole concept of Starbucks comes when he is traveling all of Europe, and he is traveling around Europe. And one of the most interesting things that he sees is that he walks around places and cafes where people are having coffee, there is a family, there is singing, there is art which is happening, there were great conversations which are happening. People weren't going directly home from their work. They used to just drop at the cafe, meet their friends, just have a good time and go home. And coffee was just an excuse. That's when he
Yeah.
comes back to the US and says, this is the third place between home and work. And that's how coffee, with every one conversation, you're changing the world, and the whole concept comes.
Exactly, the coffee
So,
conversations came into play
yeah,
then.
so I think the whole idea of not just what I'm just talking to you is an origin story, or how you can
Yes,
actually, I'm just giving you examples how you can embed some of these things, aren't we? Or
correct.
we talk about that moment when Abdul Kalam failed. I mean, the launch of I think the first uh, his first project wasn't successful, and Vikram Sarabhai uh, gently pulls him apart, pulls him aside, and he goes in front and tells him that it's a mistake that I have done, and we will own it up. And subsequently, when Professor Abdul Kalam and the team successfully do that,
Did that.
this time there was no one to see where Vikram Bhai. Everyone was searching for Vikram Sarabhai, was not
Sarabhai.
there, and he was right there. Abdul Kalam talks about it in his Wings of Fire that as a leader, it's so important to actually own up when things are down, but it's so important
Exactly.
to give credit. So very small things, and that's all you need. So to just answer your question, I think it's important that leaders, individuals, you set the culture of the team with the kind of actions. What are
True.
stories? Stories are authentic narratives of your actions. So these stories are not created stories. These are stories which are commentaries or narratives of what actually happened.
Narratives. Yeah. So these are the instances where we see that a powerful narrative actually transforms the entire organization's culture, which we have put right. That is
Absolutely.
so resounding.
And I think the second thing is that they're memorable. They have a hook because of which you remember. And I think what fundamentally makes storytelling an art and a science is this. Now there is a narrative, but if you're able to put a structure to it, for example, if you notice, every story will always have a time, place, a character, names of people, the kind of movements that have happened, and a surprising end to it, and a key takeaway that people will have to get hooked with. It's a bit like Velcro, right? So Velcro will have one side the velvety thing, and the other side it has the hook. Now the reason why the Velcro will get attached is that the hook will go and interlock with the velvety aspect on the other side. I'm going to give, and that's an analogy that I give you. You need to have the hook, you need to have the narrative, and that's how the whole thing stays with the listener, isn't it? And that's why
That is so true.
I think the whole structure part of it is very important. And once you have the structure and you practice with the structure, then over a period of time it becomes good. It's a bit like
It comes to.
it's a bit like you want to go from Bangalore to Hyderabad. There is a highway, there is a road. The initial, if you were to going, if you're going from Bangalore to Hyderabad for the first time, then you want to take the highway and the road. But if you've gone there 10 times, then you will start doing all the detours. Then you will figure out.
You'll figure out, correct.
So structures are important because structures are like the scaffolding that we have when a house is getting built. So
True.
once you know, then you can
Well
just
versed, huh? Once you're well versed with it, then you can try different things.
then
That's
you're
true.
okay with it, right? That's how it is.
Correct. So, Uday, what are the key elements of a story that can live beyond one leader, something that actually becomes a part of the organization's DNA?
Hey, that's a good one. I think stories in business conversations, specifically in business storytelling, are not for entertainment, isn't it? I mean, there's
True.
always a story. There are lots of stories, but a story is good enough. One, if it is authentic in the sense that it really connects with you. Second, it's about something that people must believe has really happened or could have happened. The plausibility is a very important aspect. The word plausible means it does seem a little extended, but it should have happened. For example, Even if you've never seen a photograph of Mr. Narayan Murthy washing the proverbial bathroom on his own, knowing his character, most of us can connect back and say, hey, that is plausible because we know how
Correct.
it's entirely believable. So I think the believability comes from the authenticity. The
True.
only reason why a story doesn't work is when it is cooked up, right? So one of the things that
Yes.
students ask and participants ask is, people, of course, you can cook up a story, but then I think the human mind is much smarter. You may feel it
Yeah.
takes some time, but consistently, the world is a small place. If it's a story which is not authentic, it will come out. It will
It will
do harm.
definitely.
And stories can be manipulative too on the negative side. It's not as if stories are always good. There are ways in
True.
which you can tell very effective stories and narratives which are harmful. So it's a tool. You must remember that this is a communication strategy, perhaps the most powerful communication strategy. And like any other communication strategic tool, or for that matter, any tool, you can use it for your benefit or you can use it for others' harm. So there's absolutely nothing stopping you from it. But
Correct.
to just answer your question, how will stories outlive? I think when a story has a strong business point or a moral takeaway. The reason why we
True.
remember the hare and tortoise story is because
Yeah.
it has got a very important thing linked to it. It's just slow and steady wins the race.
Wins the race.
Now,
Correct.
uh, as long as every story talks about or is linked by the storyteller for the key takeaway that they want you to have with that story will stick, right?
Correct.
But if you just tell a story, uh, then I'm afraid it won't because it needs that context, right?
It
So
needs the
this is the reason.
context.
This is
Correct.
also the reason why, if you go to mythology or our own Puranas, there is
Yeah.
not a single story which is just not anchored to a fundamental principle of good conduct or good living
Integrity,
or a
values, honesty, all the
so
things that we have. The
so
values, the basic values, human values that we
yeah.
say. And there's a reason, and that is why all the kids remember it. We remember it till now, our parents. So it's like the legacy that we all are leaving behind for our kids. The stories are outliving the storytellers.
Or even simplification of a complex concept, that's a very important,
Yeah,
that's also a value.
we
For
have to
example,
make it simple.
what is the most memorable science story or a science related story that you'll never that even a 5-year-old kid will know? I'm asking you, what
Oh,
is
you're asking me a science story.
anything related to science that any kid will know?
I think the crow and the water
The
that.
scientific phenomena, for example, something to do with
Okay, I remember because when you throw the stones, the water will come up. So
that's one.
I remember that. Yeah.
The one on Newton and gravity at the apple falling is something that
Okay.
everyone will know,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah, most of us will never forget. And I realize that simply because another very important value of storytelling, Preeti, especially in presentations and stuff, is that when you have a very complex technical topic, uh, analogies or
Yeah.
can be used very effectively, and analogies are nothing but storytelling, isn't it?
Exactly.
So the apple falling on Newton's head is such a powerful analogy
Analogy.
to gravity, and
True.
everyone understands what it is, right? So apart from communicating values, stories help to make it engaging, and stories also help people understand something which is very
Understand, which is
complex.
very important. Yes, yes, that's true. So, how do we blend creativity with structure so storytelling just not become something which is performative, but it actually stays a way of being, which we just were discussing about that storytelling. Even a 5-year-old could remember the concept.
Fantastic. A lot of storytelling workshop participants come and they expect, when they come to the storytelling session, they sign up for the name of the workshop. They love storytelling. Everyone loves stories, but it's very interesting that all of us. Any skill, and storytelling is a skill that you want to develop. When you want to really start using it in contexts where it serves your cause, like you want to simplify something, you want to connect with the audience, or you want to convey a very difficult change management aspect through a story about how it has to happen, we need to kind of ensure that uh, it really has uh, One, it is really practiced a lot. There is enough. You won't tell a most of the leaders whom I've known, and even you go back to the histories, even a Martin Luther King, for example, there is this concept that while we are all natural storytellers, when it actually comes to telling a story in a situation where it has to serve a cause, all of them almost always practice it. I have a suspicion that even Donald Trump
Wow.
also practices his stories. I'm sure they do because uh, if you really want that impact to happen, then you need to practice
True.
it. And structure helps you to practice it very well. There are multiple structures. For example, how do you communicate change? How do you communicate? And there's no one structure. There is hero's journey, there is multiple other things. But if you really want to get better at communication and storytelling, like any other skill, you got to rehearse it, you got to practice it. And that's where I think the magic comes, where you really understand what it is. And secondly, you can't forget the audience. I think
Exactly. I was
we
coming to
have to,
that.
I mean, the most important aspects, I keep telling you, I keep asking people the very interesting question: who is the hero of your story? So I'm going to ask you the same question: who is the hero of your story?
I'm the hero of my story. I'm the hero, villain, and protagonist, antagonist,
For example,
everything I'm myself
for
in.
example, okay, who's the hero of this podcast?
My guest.
Actually, I might want to differ from. So the thing that I keep
Okay.
telling people is that the hero of the podcast is not Uday Kiran, or definitely not Preeti, or definitely not Uday, or definitely not the content. The hero of this podcast is the person who's going to see and listen to this.
Wow, that's a great.
That's always the case.
Yeah.
Because if so I keep asking this question, that if Shah Rukh Khan is coming in this movie called Chennai Express, who's the hero of this Chennai Express? They say Chennai Express, but if you look at it from the producer's perspective, or the person who's actually doing it, Shah Rukh Khan is a hero, but the reason why uh, Shah Rukh Khan is a hero is because the audience made him that. So it is. So one of the things that I want everyone to take away is that audience is paramount, isn't it? So it's not your great presentation, it's not your beautiful waterfall diagram, it's not your beautiful story, nothing else. The one who's really the hero of your entire story, for that matter, or for that matter your presentation, or your keynote speaker, is the audience, because they are the ones who need to be taken away. And if you're going to talk something to them which does not make sense to them, they will clap, they will like it, they will, out of obedience and respect and good nature, they will come and tell you, hi, we really loved it, and come back. But uh, are they connected? Do they really want to come back again? Have they taken back something tangible? Unless you've really thought from their perspective. One of the habits, seven thing what Stephen Covey talks about, beginning with the end in mind. Storytelling is always about the end in mind. What is it that you want the person to do, and what is it that you want the
Wow.
person to kind of act? And by the way, that's also communication, right? When people ask me what is the definition of communication, one of the best definitions of communication is the response you get.
Response. Exactly.
NLP's
Correct.
version. So storytelling is also starting with, so, and hence a story that you kind of talk a story, for example, if you were a leader and you were addressing a bunch of fresh joinees, MBA trainees,
Internus,
the
yeah.
version of a story is going to be very different. You can tell the same story to a bunch of CFOs, and the way you would say it was going to be completely different with a different takeaway.
How they take it.
Yeah,
Correctly. Okay,
and
that's a
and it is
great take
you who
at
has
it.
to, fashion that tilt and that change. So unless you know why are you telling the story, the story doesn't land. So to just connect to the other question, why does a story last long? A story lasts long because the storyteller knew why he was telling that story. If I know why am I telling that story, then, for example, just going to give a 30-second example, right? So a couple of weeks ago there was this huge crash that we heard in our apartment complex in Bangalore. Excuse me. We all came out and we saw that there was a huge truck which crashed the compound wall, and we ran down to figure out what it was. There was a lot of argument. We were stunned to see that the guy who was really shouting and abusing everyone was none other than our facilities in charge, Srinivasan, the very guy who was in charge of keeping our entire facilities intact. Now, it's interesting, right? It's a 30-second anecdote. You can come back and tell me, Uday, what is the point of the story? Why are you even sharing it? Why am I even bothered about some random guy, some random apartment? And this is how you kind of make the story work. For example, let's say I'm actually walking into a bunch of managers who've just got promoted, and somebody's just asked me to address them, and I'm just walking into it, and I just see these guys, and I say, okay, fine. Hey guys, first of all, congratulations on all of you getting elevated. I know that all of you have now become managers. You're going to handle teams, and you'll have a lot of power. You'll have a lot of budgets. And one of the things that I've always realized is that, and I was thinking what I should talk to you about today. And the only thing that I want to pass on and pass on to you guys is that a thought for you to reflect upon is that people who generally get power are the ones who tend to abuse it the most.
That's so true.
A few days
That's so
ago,
true.
we were in our apartment in Sarjapur, Bangalore, and early morning, about 4:30, we heard a loud crash and bang. And we went down to figure out that there was a huge truck which crashed, and the owner was shouting at all our guards and bad mouthing them. And we were surprised that it was their own boss, Srinivasan, who was our own facilities manager, who was really shouting at all of them and abusing his power. And as I was coming down to this session to talk to you guys, I was reflecting on that incident. I was thinking that, people like Srinivasan will always exist. And once we become powerful, that can happen to any one of us. And the only
True.
thing that you want to remember is to not become like Srinivasan. Now, what happens here is that I've taken a very, very, very mundane incident, if you could actually say, and I've used that time, place, character, and dialogues with an ending and given it a context with a business takeaway point that you can't abuse power.
True.
Suddenly, a very small incident becomes meaningful. And you
That's
do it
so
in a very
true.
conversational way. And this is exactly how you need to do business storytelling. This is how you build a connect. This is how you build a context. So, context and takeaway are the the casing in which stories work. Without them, any good story is not worth it at all. You don't know why it stands for.
Wow. So, Uday, the thing is that till now we have been talking about the storytelling and how the leaders actually share the stories and create stories together with the team. Now, when we talk, we come down and we talk about the audience as we were just talking. So, how do you help teams find their own voice while staying aligned with the larger picture, aligned with the company's vision?
Well, that's a good question. I think it's important to um, the individuals and the participants. I think the first and the most important thing is that we come from a school of thought that storytelling is a fundamental communication strategy. Storytelling is not the only communication strategy. That's the first thing, right? For example, there are storytelling can really improve you to be. You want to engage an audience. You want to meet someone for the first time, and you're trying to connect with them. You're standing in front of a large team, and they don't know who you are. It's a great way to connect with people. You have a very complicated way of doing. You have a very successful project, but you want to make people understand what are the various things that you've done. You can use a couple of examples from your stories. Somebody will
True.
ask you in an interview, will they tell me uh, what was the most significant achievement, and then you can actually convert that specific moment in a project. Remember, storytelling is always about one moment, right? It's not about
Yes.
a lot of things. Now, all of these things, we have different use cases for stories. I think a lot of people who worked on storytelling now have actually developed great frameworks in which you can actually apply your experiences. But I think fundamentally there are three kinds of buckets, right? There are personal stories, that is stories which have happened to all of us. We tend to kind of deprecate ourselves and say our stories are not important, but you realize that once you are able to narrate your own experiences to someone else, or someone else's narrates your experience, you feel, wow, that's really good. But I once did an
Yeah.
experiment where I had people write the most memorable experiences, and I mixed up all the chits, and I asked everyone to apply the story format and get someone else to read out that story. And the guy who experienced, and each of the people who actually were the owners of that experience, was stunned that their experience was sounding so inspirational. So sometimes when our story
Wow.
goes out to other people, it sounds awesome, right? So stories are great to help connect and build rapport. Stories are good. So So as long as these use cases are there, I think teams can use it within their own context, right? Individuals can use it if you're meeting a new stakeholder. If you're kind of writing on LinkedIn, you can use a format. Story writing is slightly different from story telling, but fundamentally the same thing. Having said that, just because you know storytelling, it doesn't mean everything needs a story. For example, someone asks you which direction is the loo, you don't have to tell a story. 2 years ago, you know, right? You don't have to tell a story for everything.
Correct.
Having said that, that's what we tell people, right? That's what we tell people, that uh, when someone asks you something about your experience, instead of just rattling out a set of degrees or qualifications, can you kind of showcase a bit of experience on something that you did? Can you show them how you've done it rather than tell them about how you done it? When I tell show them, I think what makes a story memorable is the first thing, as I said, is that you need to have a point for that story, as what is the moral or what is the takeaway you want the audience to have. You should be able to use words that may make people see, and I think that's the skill, right? The words, for example, when I talked about the Sajapur morning, the crash, you could actually see this. Some of these
The
words,
visualization has to be there.
the
Correct.
visualization is this is the second thing, and of course, needs to kind of finish fast. I mean, we don't have the time like 5 minutes. We're not telling grandmother's tale, so we gotta be aware that you got just about a 90-second window at the best before people
Correct.
start realizing it's a story, right? A very interesting research that we know is that if I tell you that I'm going to tell you a story, then you'll say, "Oh no, don't tell me a story." But if I
Oh,
just
okay.
start out by telling you, "Hey, 2 years ago, this is what has happened," you will listen to me. So I think a lot. In fact, one of the principal rules in storytelling is that never start telling a story by telling them that let me tell you a
Let
story.
me tell you a story.
It's
Okay.
the worst kind of a failure. So yeah, so some of these things are what we tell people, get them to practice, uh, and like any other skill. Uh, I mean, if you have, the only way you get better at telling stories is when you tell them. A lot of
True.
us, also what happens, Preeti, is that we imagine that we want to tell a story, but we never tell a story,
We never tell a story. We keep it
right?
to ourselves.
One, we keep it to ourselves, or we kind of keep a lot of opinions and explanations. To give an
True.
example, when you start telling a story, you should let the story do its hard work. For example, what would happen if a Karan Johar will come onto the screen every 10 minutes in Rocky and Rani ki kahani every 10 minutes, and now what happened right now is this, and then he goes off, and then after every 10 minutes he keeps coming. A lot of us, when we tell stories, we keep explaining what happened. So just like if you tell a joke, you don't need to explain the joke.
Correct.
You should let the story work out for itself, and sometimes it's okay if people don't get it. You don't have to stop and explain it
Yes,
again.
exactly. Some will get it, some won't. So it's okay.
Yep.
But today, everyone is telling stories, and more so online. As we were just talking about LinkedIn and everything, stories are everywhere, from leaders, CEOs to MTs, interns. How does one stand out without losing authenticity?
It's a good one, and I think there is no simple answer to this. Some of the folks whom I have always followed, and what I've understood is that you don't create a story which is not true, and then the only reason why a story fails is because it's not authentic. That's number one. The second thing is that what would happen if there is a Rajnikant movie and you had a villain who was extremely weak? You don't get excited, isn't it?
There would
India's
be
in,
that
India is playing
interest.
India is playing West Indies. India played England, and the intensity and story was much more where the India was playing England. So another
Exactly.
second reason why a story will work online, offline, writing is when the stakes are high.
Yeah.
The stakes have to be high. So if it's not a story which is compelling people to kind of listen to it, then just drop it. It is not worth it. You don't have to. We keep saying that all our experiences in life are story worthy, but think about it, right? One of the analogies that I give is that if 25 years after Sholay, or 50 years after Sholay, if I have to condense Sholay into two or three things, people will only remember two or three moments, right?
Yeah.
They'll remember a Gabbar moment. They'll remember an Amitabh Bachchan toss moment. If I have to condense DDLJ into
Hmm.
two or three moments, they will do that. If I
Yes.
ask you to explain to me what is the most important thing that you remember about Gone with the Wind, you'll talk to me about two three things. Another very important concept, and so is it with life. If I have to kind of freeze frame life and ask you to kind of name some of the most important things in life that you've done, you perhaps talk about just two or three things. Now, that's this that that's the same thing that we kind of also carry back into stories, right? I mean, uh, they have to be something that is compelling. They have to be something that are very noteworthy, and the moments that you capture either from your life or from others' books. So there are three sources of stories. One is people's stories, your own
Hmm.
stories, stories that other people tell you, that whatever you, and stories that you get from books and podcasts and movies. These are the three
Correct.
buckets. And I think it's important to understand that the only reason a story works online, LinkedIn, wherever, is when some of these conditions are strongly met. When there is a strong
Hmm.
pull, when you make a very strong point with it, and the challenge is tagada,
Hmm.
the stakes are high.
The stakes are high. Even so, the why
Unfortunately,
that you said, that why has to be there. Like, why would anybody listen to that story? What's there for me?
yeah.
Kind of a thing. So, yeah.
And a very interesting thing that you talked about why. In story, the stories, we always, if you notice, every story is about the what, where, who, how, and when.
Then
There is no story
there's.
which is actually about a why. I mean,
Hmm.
a story does not answer why. For example, if I ask you, Preeti, why did you take up coaching? You will give
Hmm.
me a reason. You'll not tell me a story.
True.
What made
True.
you take up coaching? I know you'll have three or four stories. So the interesting thing about stories is that, and which you rightly just said now, is that when I actually tell the story of what, where, when, how, and who, the audience understands the why.
Yeah.
That's the power of
Correct.
a story.
That's powerful. So beautiful. True. So now, can we say that storytelling is actually a form of leadership? It's just not a communication thing. It's the way a leader is taking care of the team and driving the team towards the vision and mission of the organization that he or she is leading. Can we say that?
Absolutely agree. In fact, I would build on to that, and sometimes got into a lot of debates on it, but this is something that I hold very clear. uh, Priti, I think we all can become leaders if we are not very good decision makers. We all can become leaders even if we have got a great examples. We all can become very good leaders if we are terrible at people management. We have a lot of examples, right, in
We
corporate,
have.
in politics.
Correct.
You
Correct.
can be very good leader, and you can somehow become a leader if you're not very good at strategy or product. You can be very good at become a leader if you perhaps uh, you know uh, not very good at a lot of things that you want leaders to be good at, maybe not well groomed. But I can tell you one thing: even if you by chance become a leader by luck, if you have not been good at communication, right, if your communication sucks, then I can promise that leader will never stay, right? So the one skill that
True.
will sustain you as a leader is your communication. Look around any leader, right? Donald Trump also, I mean, a lot of
Yes.
people may not agree to this, but for good or bad reasons, he's a very effective communicator.
Hmm.
He says whatever it is and it hits. uh, so storytelling just enhances your communication skills because it really helps you to engage, connect, make whatever you said memorable. The only thing that you would remember from a lot of speeches, a Steve Jobs speech or a speech by Bill Gates or any of the other great speeches from your school, from your teachers, or what your principal has said are the stories, right? I
That's so
don't think
true.
you remember the presentation details of how the
Nothing. The
speech was,
stories.
right?
Yes.
So, yeah, so you're absolutely right. Storytelling is just taking a front footed leadership, the ability to confidently tell a story, ideally your own stories, and then, of course, stories that you've heard from other people. Just is one of those great skills that we need to really amp up. Yeah, absolutely. It's a communication strategy. And I go back to the original point that great stories happen to those only who can tell them.
Yeah. That's so nice actually when we think about that. So looking back, what has storytelling taught you about leadership? That communication. We again come back to the communication. But anything that the storytelling has told you about the basic human behavior?
So many things, right? One, I think it's uh, when people ask me what is the most important thing that really makes relationships work, and I think it's connections. I think
Connect.
even more than communication, I think connection is the biggest thing. So you connect with people, and I think stories really help us to build that connection very strongly. I'm standing in front of an audience, they don't know me at all. They're wondering if this guy about 50 years of age will be able to can we sustain him through the day. And then it takes me about 2 3 minutes to start connecting with the audience because I talk about a specific moment which really, and they're all engaged in it. Stories will make you vulnerable because
Correct.
when you share a story, you are able to kind of showcase the four kinds of stories that I keep telling people you should always have in your pocket. One, a story which helps you to build rapport and connect, which means that it shows you that I am like you. If I'm
Okay.
addressing a bunch of students, I might actually talk about a story when I was a student and I learned. If I'm talking to a bunch of doctors, I'll pick up a relevant example. So this whole process of storing stories is in a story bank is a big process. We'll come to it maybe at an appropriate time. That's the first. The second
Okay.
story that we always need to have is a story about how you had a success in a project or a venture, where you can
Okay.
talk about something that you've. The third story is about a change that you've done from something. Uh, Remember, stories are all about a journey. So from A to B. So let's say you're a HR person and you've been able to move from a legacy appraisal system to an appraisal system which is very, very empowering and very open, and feedback is done. Obviously, there's a journey there. There's a story there.
There's a
That's a
story. Yeah.
change. If an accountant is moving from a legacy accounting system to an AI-based accounting app, there is a story there. I mean, there's a story that he needs to talk about. That's the third one is a change management, and the fourth story all of us need to have is a story where we have failed, and I think
I was
stories,
about to ask you, where does that story go about the
yeah,
failure sharing?
because
Very important.
yeah, because I think while failure is one way of failure showcases more than what your success does about you.
True.
Failure showcases resilience. Failure showcases your learnability. Failure showcases your
Yes.
anti-fragility that we call, right, about your ability to bounce back from situations. So, what have you learned? And I think the world is a lot more mature today, and everyone knows that everyone's got a bit of failure around them. So, if you're able to confidently articulate your failure through a story, I think that's so. Four stories, very very powerful. And if these four stories are there in your pocket, and these are from so if you want to showcase yourself, if it is who you are actually building a rapport with others, then you need to talk about your stories. If you have, if you're generally trying to kind of, then the second preference is to about stories about people whom you've known and interacted with. And the third preference is always about stories which you've picked up from books, movies, and anecdotes. So these are the three things that we can broadly use to influence people. So yes, the first one is about these four things. The first one is about stories connect. Stories show people who you are as a person. Stories reveal your character. For example, when I tell a lot, so for example, people listening to me right now, if I have to ask them about what are the various character inferences that you are drawing about Uday Kiran, I'm sure there must be a lot more adjectives about me which people can tell than if I had just given a speech. So stories reveal a lot about your character because you're connected. Stories are vulnerable, and vulnerability is very powerful to connect with audiences.
Yes.
Yeah, see, these are the three things that I think stories have taught me, and yeah, so uh,
Wow.
it's easy, and it's easy to do this if you are uh, if you believe in it, but it's also a skill that you need to put a lot of effort in. It's not going to happen just like that.
Correct. Correct. So, Uday, for the leaders listening to this who are there in the audience and they want to scale their stories beyond themselves, where should they begin?
Well, I think they should to begin with. They need to kind of start testing the stories out with limited audiences. So when I typically give them a framework to work on, so in this workshop, the first story that I teach people is how to build a connection story, which has got a specific structure where there's a time, place, character, and sequence of events, and the character dialogues and the unanticipated ending and the business point. The first way to do that, I get them to tell their story to another partner to the audience. And then I asked the partner who listened to the story to give a
Okay.
feedback to the person who told the story about what are the values they heard in that story. Did he hear? If I was telling the story to you, I would ask you, Preeti, and Preeti would say, I heard, Uday, that story I thought was about your hard work or your determination or your innovation or your never giving up attitude. Now you take the story again and test it with another person, or maybe over a period of
Okay.
a week, test it with 6 to 7 people, and I call this the beta testing of stories.
Wow.
So what happens eventually is that you will get a set of attributes that people are recognizing with the story. Let's say the hard work and determination comes at very consistently, then you know that this is a story that you can actually use every time you want to make a point about hard work. And tomorrow you
Correct.
have a seminar or you want to talk to your team about the value of hard work, then you could actually talk about this story. So that's how you kind of, so just like any new software product or a new physical product, you want to test a story
You want to
before it
test
goes into
it.
the
So
product.
a proper structure, that test, and then you just have to practice, practice. And then once you are done with that, maybe then you know where you can fit in that story as per the
Yeah.
audience.
And that's
Right.
and that's where I think you need a coach if you're really serious about it. That's where you need a little bit of professional guidance. That's where you
Correct.
need to kind of maybe attend a read. You can read a lot of books. You can actually listen to podcasts. But what we believe in Menza is that you only get better in confidence if you speak. So
True.
you can learn how to swim, for example, or you can actually see a lot of people swimming, but unless you swim, you're never going to get there. It's a bit like
Yeah.
that about
Yeah.
speaking and storytelling. So the best way to get better at stories is to tell them. So you need practice, you need a safe space, uh,
Correct.
you need uh, you need a bit of a coaching, and then of course you need to keep believing that it's going to work. So
Wow. That's a great structure. I think whoever is listening, we can actually use this structure to it. So, there, before we wrap up, we all would love to hear what's that one story from your life or work that stays closest to your heart?
well, there are many at this point of time I'd like to talk about, but since we have a common connection, I'm going to talk about Samsung. So this was in 2019 in January, winter, and one of the things that I learned and I think that was a very important thing that I learned at that point of time was to chart your own course. So I was making this very difficult transition, and from what was a prominently good, fairly good sales and business head career in a very sales and a marketing led organization to a role which was not seen as glamorous, but I was very passionate about it to kind of move into a sales and training academy role. And I was sitting with Mohandeep Singh in his room, and I was telling him that, look, Mohandeep, this is a difficult challenge that I'm going to have, and I'm not going to be in the limelight, and I'm definitely sure I'm not going to get most of my promotions and whatever. Mohandeep was like typically, Mohandeep was a sales head for sales and marketing head for us in Samsung. He shrugged, and then he asked me a very interesting question. He asked me, "What do you, Uday, what do you think about Sachin Tendulkar? What do you think about his qualities?" And I said, "Sachin's my favorite batsman. He's a great cricketer. He's a great human being, and I think he's the best batsman in the world." And then he asked me, "What do you think about his captaincy?" And I said, "Look, nobody thinks anything about Sachin's captaincy. And I think when he was leaving his captaincy, he was extremely worried. And he was very worried that he will be shunted out and he was not going to be in the limelight." And Mondeep said with his typical critical, I said, look, Sachin's worst moment was when he left the captaincy. But then after that, he charted his own course because he became the best batsman in the world. He became the best, highest run getter. He won the World Cup. And today, there's not a single one out there about the billions of Indians who's even bothered about his captaincy. No one bothered if Sachin was a good captain or not. So he said, you have to chart your own course. You may not get the limelight today, but you chart your own course, you figure it out, and you will find a success in your own path. It's not going to be easy, but you got to let go of what happened. And I think that was a very ting moment for me because I don't know if Mohandeep realizes that, but it kind of made me change and look at the whole thing in perspective. Right? I think that was a big moment because that was when I started off my professional coaching. If he remembers that, I moved on to storytelling. Then it wasn't an easy path. Believed in it, and then you know it doesn't matter that I'm not a business head for an official organization or I did not get a vice presidentship or a senior vice president. And I think and for me, that was a pivotal moment, right? And so when I talk about people changing careers, I talk about this moment and I tell them that, look, what made you successful earlier will not make you successful going forward. So you'll have to let go of
True.
a lot of these things which are there in yours.
Oh, wow, that's such a beautiful reminder that most powerful stories actually are, it often is born from the most personal moments, the
Yeah,
incidents that have happened in our journeys. Great. And if you could rewrite one chapter of your story, would you want to change anything, any one chapter, or
I'm good
yeah?
with the way things are. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've understood from the past is that you wish you could change that part, but then somebody also told me that when you change that part, you have to change a lot of other parts along with it.
Everything is
Because that,
interconnected.
yeah, so I think that's too much of hard work. I'm glad things have happened the way they have. Uh, and I'm glad things are going the way they are. So, yeah, absolutely okay with this.
Wow. Great. So thank you so much, Uday, for sharing your wisdom, your stories, and the authenticity that leaders truly need today. And to everyone listening, remember, stories just don't shape organizations, they shape people, they shape your teams. So unmute yourself, tell your story, live your truth, and let it echo far beyond words. Thank you so much, Uday, for
Thank you.
joining us today.
I hope you
Yeah.
really got something out of it. I really enjoyed this conversation. And all the best for Unmute Yourself.
No, we had a lot to learn from today. The episode. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing everything. And until next time, to our audience, stay real, stay reflective, and keep rewriting your own story. Thank you. Thank you so much.